On March 14th, 1891, New Orleans saw the worst lynching in the history of the United States. The victims? No, it wasn't blacks, it was 11 Italian immigrants. The following year, 1892, in recognition of the 400-year anniversary of Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue, Columbus Day was born as a national holiday, first as a one-off event, and later, after enough states were already recognizing it, the Congress passed a bill to recognize it as a federal holiday. Today is June 19th, and we'll be looking at the curious case of Juneteenth. A colleague of mine had me read over an email to their department announcing our company's last-minute decision to close in honor of Juneteenth. What struck me was their line about in recognition of the end of slavery. Much like Cinco de Mayo, it seems no one actually really knows what Juneteenth is actually celebrating. So, I of course did some digging. For the uninitiated, Juneteenth, also known as Emancipation Day, is a local celebration in Texas. Like many wars spread over large swaths of land before the advent of the telephone, the surrender of Robert E. Lee in April of 1865 didn't actually reach Texas until late June of 1865, at which point General Gordon Granger and 2,000 Union troops entered and occupied the city of Galveston and officially read the Emancipation Proclamation, thus freeing the slaves of Texas. From a historical perspective, Texas being the last state freed is interesting, but that's pretty much it. Of course, for the people of Texas, I'm sure they're very happy about it, and I certainly don't seek to downplay it. It's just, what's really the national significance? We don't celebrate the abolition of slavery in each other state, nor should we. It's more of a local thing. Okay, so now that you know what it is, you might be wondering why you've never heard of it before. And we actually already covered it. It's a local Texas thing. So why are we hearing about it now? In early June 2020, the campaign to elect Donald Trump announced his intention to host his first rally since the coronavirus pandemic in Tulsa, Oklahoma on June 19th. We knew that there would be opposition to this, and it was expected that it would be based on coronavirus, but due to the large-scale protests and riots taking place across the large cities, the efforts to cancel the event were kind of a non-starter. So then, the media types pivoted to instead trying to cancel the event vis-a-vis showing respect for Juneteenth. Donald Trump, to many people's surprise, simply postponed the event to the following day, which had the duplicative effect of forcing the hand of the media to actually double down on the importance of Juneteenth, since now the president was recognizing it. We're also seeing a cascading shame and cover your ass campaign insofar as large corporates are now shuttering for either half days or full days off in celebration, of Juneteenth. Given the invasive spread and inability for anyone to speak against this openly, I could easily see this becoming our 11th national holiday. Okay, so we've spent the whole time now covering the what, and we haven't actually even gotten to my argument, so let's talk the why. Ostensibly, media and corporate types are pushing this holiday as a form of cultural reparations, and generally it's taking the form of kneeling to the demands of Black Lives Matter. The reality, though, is that all this effort, even if you manage to ram through this date as a federal holiday, is that all this deference to Juneteenth is basically the calendar equivalent of posting a black square to your Instagram. Will any issues be solved for the black community? Is racism now dead? No. So what can you do? Media types would have you believe that the solution is pretty simple. Donate to progressive groups, protest, create an echo chamber in all facets of your life, work, home, public, etc., and most importantly, vote blue. I have a different take for you, though. And first I'll start off with a couple of quotes. When you live in a poor neighborhood, you have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. When you get a poor education, you can only work in a poor-paying job. And that poor-paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. Quotes from Malcolm X looking at the circular nature of life in a poor black community. We know that more than half of all black children live in single-parent households, a number that has doubled since we were children. We know the statistics. The children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and to commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They are more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home, or become teenage parents themselves, and the foundation of our community are weaker because of it. That quote is from Barack Obama in 2008, addressing a congregation at his church in Chicago. So what's my argument? If you want to help the black community, first and foremost, you need to support a couple of initiatives. First off, that's welfare reform. Welfare should be structured in a way that it eliminates its own need. Currently, welfare is structured in a way that it actually creates a dependency. This dependency supplants the traditional nuclear household, and that's why the country on a whole has seen a steep increase in fatherless households. None hit harder than the black community, where it's actually now 3 in 4 children are raised without a dad. Welfare reform to provide that safety net that gets people back on their feet, supports and encourages the traditional family unit, rather than doing what it does now, keeping people on their knees, begging for scraps, is the key to improving the lives of those in depressed communities. The second thing is support school choice. Unions are great in theory. In practice, especially public sector unions, and in particular teachers' unions, hold politicians and students hostage. The teachers' unions vote as a bloc for the politician that gives them the sweetest deal. The sweetest deal usually means entrenched teachers and no accountability. One way to solve poor schooling, as Malcolm X put it, is to give parents at the national level the ability to choose the school of their choice, not the state's. Competition always improves in industry, and the educational industry is in sore need of some competition. Charter schools, school vouchers, not being locked into a failing school district, gives parents control. After all, they know better than Uncle Sam. Lastly, support economic opportunity zones. The reality is that depressed neighborhoods are not attractive areas for investment, but that doesn't mean there aren't enterprising types willing to start or expand their businesses within them. Create the financial means and incentives to kickstart the economy of these neighborhoods and help the people who live in them to earn a decent wage, create better lives for themselves, which in turn will motivate and view them in a pride that they deserve. There's one party that actually puts their money where their mouth is when it comes to giving black people a true equality of opportunity. That party doesn't pander and talk about systemic this, reparations that, post black squares, or honor pseudo-holidays. Instead, that party champions the traditional family unit, champions the ability for parents to choose the schools that are right for them and their children, and as part of the 2017 tax bill, created over 9,000 such opportunity zones, which, pre-pandemic, led to the highest employment, the highest wage growth among blacks ever. Which party is that? Hint, it's not the Democrats. So in celebration of this Juneteenth, I challenge you to look at the actual systemic problems that face the black community. A good place to start would be the policies that have led to all the issues Malcolm X and Barack Obama highlighted all those years ago.